and welcome to Tea with Cecil. I'm here today with my friend, Sherri L. Smith. Sherri is the author of multiple award-winning fiction and nonfiction books for young people, including the 2021 Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators Golden Kite Award, The Blossom and the Firefly. She's been a California Book Awards gold medalist for Fly Girl. She's written all kinds of historical novels. Her novels appear on multiple state reading lists. They've been named Amelia Bloomer Award, Junior Library Guild, Children's Book Council, Southern California Independent Booksellers Award, American Library Association, Best Books for Young People. She also writes comics. And she happens to be one of my dearest friends. Fabulous author, fabulous person. I just lisped. Welcome, Sherri.
Because you're so excited.
I know I am. Hi, Sherri.
Hi, Cecil. That was amazing. Like, boy, do you ever feel down and like things aren't going your way? I'm just gonna call you and be like, could you tell me what I've done? Could you make me feel accomplished? Because oh my gosh, that was amazing.
I'm just
how are you?
Back to you how amazing you are, and just what nourishing lifeline you are for me in my art world. So thank you so much for talking with me today.
That goes absolutely both ways. When the world doesn't understand you, another writer can understand, and you're my other writer. You're the person who gets it. So,
I miss you.
Such love.
Okay, so first question that I ask everyone is, what are you drinking with me today for tea? Do you have a hot beverage, a cold beverage? Is it sweet, sour? What is it?
I have a hot cup in one of my favorite tea mugs. It is traditional medicinal Tulsi with ginger, organic, which I started drinking about a year or so ago. You could probably trace this back to the start of the pandemic. I started drinking Tulsi with ginger because the ginger is good for digestion, but the Tulsi is good for stress relief. And then I love traditional medicinals. I have for years. If you steep it long enough, you get all these good healing qualities in the botanicals. And each tea bag comes with a little message. So this one has the proverb, plant kindness and gather love.
Ah, well, I feel like that's what we're doing right now, right?
Exactly.
Planting kindness and gathering love. Yay. Okay, well, I'm drinking in my NASA cup. Awesome. And I was just telling you before we started recording that I had a very long Zoom. And of course, it started, at lunchtime, and I didn't eat anything. And then we were going to meet. And so I'm having some miso soup, which is always warm and delightful and nourishing. Yeah, exactly.
Umami.
Okay, so my next question is, who are you? I mean, I know I just told everyone who you are, but who are you? And how do we know each other? When did we meet? How do we know each other?
Oh boy, who am I? I am a woman who tries really hard. I'm the Spider-Man of women who try really hard and things just don't always work out. But I don't have all the superpowers. I don't have the strength of 8 women. So I am someone who comes from a background in film and broadcast journalism. Those were my degrees in undergrad, and I worked in film and in animation before sort of committing to the reality that I was a writer. I actually took a trip to Alaska once where people were like, "Are you a writer?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "But you're writing." And I was like, "So what? That doesn't everybody writes." So I finally have committed to that. So today I am someone who writes, as you said, comics and books for young people. I also teach creative writing at the university level. At Hamline University has a MFA program in children's writing. And I also teach some classes on my own. I am the foundress of, that's not a word, but of Story Forest, which is something that I sort of stumbled into. Well, another thing I got into during the pandemic was I got some certificates in applied mythology and in fairy tale archetypal analysis. And so Story Forest is a way we use old folk tales and fairy tales to sort of deepen our practice as writers. And so that's my new thing. So I guess I'm a curious person and I'm a dreamer. And we know each other because many moons ago, Cecil, as you will recall, we did a local Southern California independent booksellers event. And that was one of those lunches, or it was a dinner actually, and they have a writer at every table, and then you're there with a bunch of booksellers and other people. And then we all did signings in another room. And I ran into you in the signing room and you said, "Oh, I know your book. It wasn't awful." If you had read it as a judge in some contest where you had to just read piles and piles of books, and that is, having done that, that's high praise. That is high praise.
That is true. It was the book, in case anybody wants to know, it's fabulous. It's called Hot, Sour, Salty, Sweet. And I loved it. And I was a judge for, I can't even remember what award it was, but I was a judge, and it was like my eyes were bleeding a lot from all the bad books. And because there are a lot of bad books out there, I'm sorry to say.
It's just the more books there are, the more the quality, the range of quality. And you're right, I needed a new eyeglass prescription after being a judge. So you're not lying about your eyes bleeding.
And so when you find a book in those piles when you're judging, there are certain books that they might not win, like they might not be what the criteria is or whatever, but you're so excited that it's a great book and that it's charming, it's readable, it's fun. And that's how I felt about that book. But that's so funny because I don't remember that at all. What I remember is that, what I remember is you and I did a panel at the LA Times Festival of Books together when I had started the YA stage there. And it was the first time that like we kind of hung out and talked afterwards. And I remember, I think you were there with your husband. And I think you and I were like standing there, and there were just like so many things we had in common, so many nerdy things, and so many ways that we felt together about writing and like, I don't even know what, but I just remembered, I feel like I was just like touching you and just being like, be my friend, be my friend. Please
we did do a panel together, and I think it must have been after we first met. Like that meeting in person sort of put me on your radar.
Yeah.
And I wasn't married at the time, so, and I'm guessing unless we had just started dating and he was trying to impress me by coming to a book event with me, it was probably not my husband.
Oh, I know you were with someone.
That's so funny. No, you might be right.
They were like trying to pull you to go somewhere else, but I think you're right. I think we had met once, and this is the first time that we were talking. But I just remember asking you at that moment, like, can we be friends? Like, please, can we be friends? And I think you said yes. And
the answer is yes.
Yes. And like whatever. Lo, these many years later.
Here we are. It worked. We must have meant it.
Yeah, we did. We did mean it, Sherri. I want to go back to the story thing, but that's like a later question. So so I'm going to move on with my questions because that is how we know each other. And now we are pretty like good bouncing boards. Like I've cried on your shoulder. I think you've cried on my shoulder, even if there were no tears. It was metaphorical crying.
Yes, you've helped me birth books that.
Yeah. And you've helped me figure out undoing the knots in my story problems sometimes. And I just want to say thank you. It's really important, I think, to have sort of swim buddies, as artists. And that's part of what like my Tea with Cecil thing is like me getting to like talk to like all my favorite creator people.
These are your swim buddies. Yeah. So when you get a creative cramp, there's someone there to massage it out and haul you to shore. Absolutely.
Exactly. Okay. So, you know what? my next question is ask about something of theirs that they did that I loved. And with you, there's just so many different books of yours that I love so fucking much. but I do, let's talk about I always like talking about older things as well,
Okay.
not just, so let's give some love to Hot, Sour, Salty, Sweet. Can you want to talk about that book a little, how it came up, and how you came up with it? And it was a middle grade book.
Yeah, that was a middle grade. Hot, Sour, Salty, Sweet is my third novel. And you know how that came about was actually, so I was dating my husband at the time, and I had a panic attack about the world and decided to go back for another master's degree in creative writing, thinking that, oh, I can teach. If nothing else, I could teach. And I had to write an essay, just to show my writing level for the university. And I ended up writing about the commonality of rice between all these different cultures. And my husband is Asian and I'm African American, but we both come from cultures that rice is a staple. And it got me thinking about, like, oh, what if my boyfriend married me and we had a daughter, and what would it be like? And so I ended up writing, like, I'm sure if I had told him where the story idea came from at the time, I'm sure I'd be a single lady today. He'd be like, please don't write fictional children with your recent boyfriend, but why not? So Hot, Sour, Salty, Sweet is about a girl named Anna who is half Chinese American, half African American, and it's on the day of her 8th grade graduation. I wanted to write a book, this is going to sound pretentious, I wanted to write like Hemingway, do a book that took place in like a short period of time. I think is it For Whom the Bell Tolls or Farewell to Arms, one of those is like a 3-day during the Spanish Revolution. So I was like, oh, I'm going to write this in one day. I guess more it's like the TV show 24. And so it's the day of Anna's graduation, and she's going to invite her, she's got a school dance, and she's got a crush on the valedictorian. She's the salutatorian, and she's hoping that they'll get to dance at the graduation dance. The dance is called off for disastrous reasons, and her best friend tries to save the day by inviting the boy and his family over to Anna's house for a celebratory dinner, not realizing that both of her grandparents are, sets of grandparents are in town, and that they do not get along, and there's never been a family dinner without some sort of disaster. And so it is, the title comes from the flavors in Asian food: hot, sour, salty, and sweet. And it is about how food brings us together, how it carries our heritage and history, and then also just about the embarrassment of family.
I mean, I loved that book, and I'm so glad that it brought us together.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, it's a great book. If you for anybody who wants to read fabulous books by Sherri, that's a great one. But she has so many other ones. I do love a little writer challenge, though. I love that you were like, I'm gonna do this in 24 hours. I've done that before with my books, like with Rose Sees Red, it's like 48 hours in New York City. And then like I've done little challenges like First Day on Earth, where it's like, how short can I get a chapter? And it's like
right
chapters and stuff. I do think that there's a lot of value in, as writers, in giving ourselves these little sort of like gauntlets thrown down for
it's
ourselves.
like bonsai. It's like or a forced bloom in a hothouse. Like if you give yourself constraints, it actually gives you more ideas.
Yeah.
Because you have to become creative. So every book I come up with a challenge, whether it's like writing in the present tense or, let's see, what the thing I'm working on now is 3 different timelines, and characters from each timeline sort of converging in the present too. So yeah, you've got to challenge yourself.
And this gives a good segue to my next question, which is, what are you working on and what just came out? So you're working on this 3 timeline book, which is very exciting.
I kind of don't want to talk about
Yeah,
it
you don't have to talk about it at all.
because
You don't have to talk
I
about
mean,
it.
the true story of this is that I have been working on this for far longer than I was supposed to. And basically, sort of the, I don't know, societal collapse that I feel like we've experienced over the past 4 years sort of kept me trying to run ahead of a tsunami of change. How do you write? It was my first contemporary story in a few years. How do you write a contemporary story when what we define as now keeps changing? We are right now, we're standing on the knife's edge of a lot of change. So there's no after yet. We're just in the now.
Yeah.
And books come out a few years after you've finished them. And so I've really struggled with this. And you, dear Cecil, were the person who helped me with this when I had written a draft and thought I had something, but it wasn't working. And I sat down with you in a car in the middle of the street and said, this is what's going on. And you said, oh, you haven't written a terrible book, Sherri. You've written 2 pretty good books, but they don't belong together unless you do X, Y, and Z. And that was just like, you had just said, oh, these are conjoined twins. That's why it looks like this. And so I have just done the work of separating the twins, and they are both still alive.
I'm very excited. It's going to be great.
Amazing.
And yeah. And I'm just so glad too, because I mean, that's just the testament to good creative conversations, which I've had a shit ton with you about, where I've changed stuff in my own work. I remember there was one particular time where I gave you an advance, like the PDF of Shade the Changing Girl, issue number 1, and you read it. And I'd written it was 22 pages and it was like in this order. And you were like, excuse me, Cecil, this page is in the wrong place. You should move it over here. And I was like, oh my God, you're totally right. And then I had this long email thread with my editor and they were like, what? You can't change where you put the page. And I was like, no, it'll totally make sense. And that's very complicated in comics because there's like, the right page and the left page and the turn pages and stuff like that. And they took a look at it and they were like, yes. And it made the issue. It like saved my ass. And I appreciate that.
That's awesome. I mean, you're right about like I think a creative conversation with another creative person who's sort of vibing on the same level is valuable. Like I always tell my students, don't tell everybody about your work, because when you're having creative conversations with people who aren't creating in the same place you are, it can just be noise. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can deflate your balloon. Yeah. But so you find the right person that you can share it with, who gets what you're going for, and you're right, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah. But I also think it's really interesting what you said. I just want to touch on it for a minute because I've had this struggle as well. I'm writing a graphic novel, and when I was, trying to come up with something with my editor, we were touched. She was like, oh, contemporary. And it was the middle of the beginning of lockdown or whatever. And I was like, well, what is that? What is that right now? And like, and I do think that it is a real big art question for right now is like, how, because I feel like we're still in the thick of it. So you can't really process sort of like what has happened yet. And I feel like it's too soon to kind of have like a good psychic distance on, on what this is. And I think that it is a little bit of a art crisis. I'm excited about all the stuff that's going to come out in like the next 10 years. I'm here for it.
But right now it's like writing a memoir in real time.
Yeah.
It's not a memoir because you have no perspective on it. And and thinking literally about art, if you're writing a contemporary graphic novel, are people wearing masks?
Yeah.
It's the things like that. And you've watched TV shows do all these different versions of it, and maybe they'll have the COVID episode, and then it somehow resolves. I read a book earlier this winter that was about, it took place after the pandemic. So it's a series. And so the book was like, since that last book, there was this terrible pandemic and everybody remembers the wonderful day when it ended. And it made me so angry because I was just like, it's not over. It was like being in prison and reading a book about how you just got out of prison. And I was just like, but I'm not out of prison yet. Does this mean they'll forget me here? So yeah, it's hopefully this is one of those constraints that will lead to really interesting creativity.
I think it absolutely will. I just find it hard to, I don't think I would be able to write about this time right now. Yeah, and I don't want to. And but I'm very excited to see the art that in 20 years from now that kids come up with, like, young artists. Like, I cannot wait. Sign me up for the masterpiece theaters of like that, like those stories. I'm ready for it, but not right now. All right, my next
the result of growing up in this is going to be
totally
something to behold. I agree.
Totally.
With that.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Okay, but I also would like to, you just had like a bunch of things come out. You had something come out this week.
Oh, I did. Unfortunately, I don't even have a copy yet to like hold up and show you. But yeah, I have a little golden book out. It's my little golden book about Misty Copeland, who is the first African-American principal ballet dancer for the American Ballet Theater. And so little golden books, like you guys remember the adorable little golden books, like the pokey little puppy with the strip of gold on the side. The art is by Tara Nicole Whitaker, who is amazing. It is the cutest stuff you've ever seen. And it's a biography of this amazing dancer. And I'm delighted because my mom had been a dancer and had a dance school down in New Orleans when she was young. And I danced when I was a little kid. And so it was just a real treat. And one of the cool things is Misty Copeland at one point was invited to dance on stage for Prince for his concerts. And so like I have the little golden book with an illustration of Prince in it. And there's something so amazing and cute about it.
So cute. But that's not the only book that you just recently had come out.
No, it's not. And it's funny, I can blame the supply chain that I don't have any copies to hold up for any of these.
Don't
but
worry, I'll put a little thing.
We'll find some images online. I have written a few books in the Who HQ series from Penguin Workshop. And so I have written Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen? You know them as the Who Was, What Were books. Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen? What is the Civil Rights Movement? And most recently, what was the Harlem Renaissance? About this big groundswell of creativity in the African-American community here in the United States, centered in Harlem, but there was a Renaissance around the world in the 1920s, 30s, and sort of ending at the beginning of the 40s. Those books are intense because it's a lot of research packed into just a few pages and then some amazing art. And I learn so much in doing the research and writing the books, and bump into the challenge of when you're writing history, everything you leave out could be hobbling the truth. Mm-hmm. So sort of making those decisions, and like, at least I have the comfort of knowing, because I'm writing for young readers, that what I want to do is pique their interest so that they go and dig deeper. So every one of those books has a bibliography at the back with books for adults and books for kids, so you can learn more, because it really is hard to like have bounty and then be like, and I offer you a bite.
Yeah, no, okay. I also want to talk though, what was the last fiction? Because those are sort of books that you've been hired to do,
and both nonfiction.
Yeah, and that's part of the bread and butter that both you and I sort of have in our creative toolkit. But what was the last creator-owned book that you had?
The last creator-owned book was my novel, The Blossom and the Firefly, which came out a month before lockdown. And that is my third World War II book, Second World War II novel. And it's set in Japan. And it's the story of a 15-year-old schoolgirl named Hana, whose class in Japan during the war, students were mobilized to help the war effort. And so she and her classmates are assigned to work as maids on the local Air Force base for kamikaze pilots who would fly to this, it was a little town in southern Japan, and the base there was their last base before they got their orders for their suicide missions. And by the end of the war, this is spring 1945, the pilots were as young as 17. So it is a love story between a boy named Taro, who is a violinist and a pilot, and Hana, who is one of these schoolgirls. And, you know, it is Asian melodrama, it is history, it's the cost of war. I hope that it is as beautiful a book as I feel it is in my heart, but it's the beauty of melancholy, you know.
Yeah, and Golden Kite.
And that, yes, that won the Golden Kite Award. Yeah, thank you. I should be parading around my little award.
Your sticker. Yeah, so yes, that's beautiful. Now, this is a good question, which is my next one, which is how do you figure out what you're going to work on next? How do you figure out that a story is really a story that you're going to write? I get ideas all the time, and not all of them actually make it on the page. How do you figure out what you're going to write about? How do you figure out what project sort of is the thing? Right.
It really varies. Like sometimes, because I have a bunch of ideas, and I have a bunch of things that are sort of in the nursery, waiting for me to plant them outside so that I can really, give them a go. So it's a variety of things. Sometimes I will talk to my editor or my agent and say, like, these are the things I'm thinking. It's like you spread your cards. These are which hand should I play? Like you spread them all out, and they say, oh, we're really looking for, like, so Blossom and the Firefly. I had a couple of ideas, and they said, well, we'd really love another historical fiction from you because, Fly Girl did so well, and we think you do such a great job with that. And I was like, well, I happen to have an idea. And so that's how that happened. And just sometimes, the story just wants to be told, and it shows up and knocks you over the head. And these days I tend to sell stories on pitches. I don't always get to write the whole book and then be like, look, I wrote this novel. Is anybody interested? So then I write pitches that are sort of like movie trailers, something to get you excited about the idea. And then I have to figure out what the hell it actually is. Right. And that doesn't always go as smoothly as I would like, or according to plan, which I think is where I am with the book I have right now. Like the pitch made a lot of sense, and then I had to figure out what was holding up that idea.
I do that with comics, with some graphic novels now, but I haven't written a novel in so long that now I'm sort of required to write the whole thing. And I've been busy feeding myself with other work. Right. It's like kind of hard.
It is hard, but I also think it would be great. Like, it's not, it's nice to have a lunchtime project. Like one of my books, Pasadena, was a lunchtime project. I was working on other things, but every day at lunch, I would go to Sharky's and I would order a giant tray of nachos, and I would write the novel longhand on a legal pad. And I gained a lot of weight. I can no longer eat nachos. But then I had a first draft while I was getting other things done, and I typed it all up, and it was only 50 pages long, but it was the start. And so then sometimes that is the planting of the seed, the little seedlings, and you germinate it. And then I could say, I have this thing.
Yeah.
Is it?
I should try that. Like, it's hard when I don't actually go anywhere because it's like the whole day, like, especially during the pandemic, just everything is like become.
Yeah, what's a day?
It's like, wait, it was Monday and now it's Friday at 5 p.m. What happened? Like,
Totally how
what
I
happened?
feel.
But I do think that is, that's really good. A good way of thinking of it. Like, I mean, I kind of feel like maybe, I have this one project, this World War I novel that I want to write. And I kind of feel like that's something that I'm starting to sort of poke at. Okay, well, what's your art process or theory, or what's the best advice that you would have gotten or would give or give yourself, or what's,
Well, I was about to give it. So I think, I mean, I might have other good advice, but the thing that you just made me think of is when you have the spark of the idea, write it down. When you have enough juice that you can actually write the outline. I work off of outlines. I'm a planner. Write the outline. And the reason you write the outline, even if it's a novel that you don't have the time to write right now, it makes it so much easier for you to write it at lunchtime or in little bits, because you can look at a beat on the outline and go, this week I'm going to write beat number 3 because that's the scene where they go to the grocery store.
I don't know. I'm such not I mean, this is my fatal flaw maybe as an artist.
Yes.
Is that like, is that I'm not, all right. I take that as your gauntlet thrown down.
Yes, I throw it down. I should find a glove. All I have is a sock. I throw my sock down. Here's why I have.
The thing that I've found is that I don't write every book the same. And so I can say, oh, I'm a pantser. And I just, I'm not a plotter, I'm a pantser. Like I do it like this, or I write my last sentence first, or I blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that no project that I've ever done has ever been born and created and sprung forth in the same way. So I feel like because I really do want to write this book and another book, and I don't have the time because I'm doing these other little things at this moment in particular, why not try to just write the outline and then like try to do it like you say? Because that actually, to me, what that sounds like is manageable bites.
Totally. That's what it's all about.
That makes my brain feel good. And so I take your advice. And I
take the sock of challenge, and I appreciate it, and put it on your foot of creativity, because
I'm going to walk in those.
That's right. Walk in those socks. Here's the thing, same for me. I mean, so very rarely have I pantsed completely, but an outline is not written in blood or carved in stone. It is a springboard, and it is so that you get down the good stuff and some of the crap, and then you can look at it and shape it at that level without having to worry about 50,000 words. And if it stops working for you, you can switch. You don't have to do it. But particularly when you're trying to sort of grab that spark out of the sky, and save it for a rainy day, that is a great way to lock it down. And then if you're very lucky and you get to go on like a retreat or something, bring your outline with you, and it's like you can unpack the world.
And I think the difference is that in my mind, an outline is something that you hand into someone and is set in stone. And what I'm remembering is that it's like, no, an outline can also just be something, just notes to yourself, basically. I love it.
People are terrified of outlines, and you don't need to be.
Yeah. Okay. You touched on this earlier, but I wanted to touch on it again, because one of my questions is, we are here in the pandemic still. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is because it's really breaking me that it's sort of, I don't even understand where we are in the pandemic. And like, but I feel like it's irresponsible for me to be like, hey, I'm back in town, let's hang out and go do a thing, so so this is my sort of solution to not being at Comic-Cons and book fests and having dinner together with you. Yeah, exactly. But what is it is there anything that you learned that was new, or that how did you grow, or, something that you created in the pandemic? But why don't we talk about your story, Forrest, and the the certificates or whatever that.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I'd gotten a certificate in Enchantivism, which is activism for introverts that uses deep storytelling, mythology, dream work, and eco-psychology and parapsychology to affect positive change in the world. And from that work, I mean, I've always loved fairy tales and mythology and folklore. So when I came across this certificate in the art of fairy tale archetypal analysis from the Assisi Institute, I was like, oh, sign me up. I want to know what that's like. And it's interesting because it's kind of a depth psychology approach to fairy tales. But in working with it and in doing some dream work, I sort of came across this sort of liminal space that I call story forest. And I thought, oh, this is a place for us to like connect, reconnect with our creativity and connect with our writing at a different level. And so back in October, I actually did the first, I call them paths. I did the first path through the story forest, which was Little Red Riding Hood. And basically I tell the story. I did it with a group of women writers online, share the story of Little Red Riding Hood, and every step along the way, ask some questions that basically use the story as metaphor. And we worked our way through it. And over the next few days together, we tackled the baskets. For instance, in the beginning of Little Red Riding Hood, Little Red's grandmother, who loved her enough to make her this velvet cloak, is ill, and the mother packs a basket and says, this will make her feel better. Take it to her. So one of the questions is, what medicine is in your basket?
Right.
You know, what medicine does your story carry? So next up is, I'm going to be doing Vasilisa the Beautiful, which is a Russian folktale about a beautiful young woman who, on her mother's deathbed, the mother gives her a little doll and says, feed this doll and give it a little something to drink, and she'll help you in times of trouble. And so I've been thinking about using the dolls as spark dolls to capture the spark of your story so that you can return to that in times of trouble. So I made a little spark doll. I know he's a little blurry. Well, she's wearing a mask because we are in the pandemic. But I have sort of tattooed her body with elements from my novel in progress. And it's interesting because even after talking to you and recognizing that I had combined two stories and that was a problem, this doll is still correct. This doll still holds what the actual kernel of the novel is. And so I'm going to be running this class. We'll be using paper dolls, but I love the idea of these weird little rag dolls. Even though dolls scare me, it'll be interesting if I end up with a wall full of them.
I feel like that's very beautiful and I love it. And I love, because I think there is something so sacred about dolls as well, you know, like as like sort of the keeper of our hearts, like when we're little. But I remember, I don't know if you ever did this. I feel like it's something you would have done, but Eden Lepucky had a workshop once at like Writing Workshops LA, where it was like, make like a little diorama of your, like it was like like construct a little diorama of your story of, you know.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I feel like I'll ask you what it is and I'll email you because I feel
along
like
those lines
part of the story for us. But I love that.
Laurel Snyder does, she collects a box of artifacts for things that would fit
maybe
in her
that's
story.
I think
and I've worked with, I've had students do that where I just say, bring in one thing that your character owns. And it's amazing. This woman, she brought in these little baby shoes, like vintage baby shoes that she had found somewhere. And she did not know until she brought them in that that was something significant to her character.
Right. I love it.
Magic in the world.
All right. That is a good thing to have learned during the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, when you can't go out, you go in. you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, part of it has one thing that I learned. I mean, there have been a bunch, but one thing that I think corresponds is I did a lot of seed scrapping from my kitchen,
Yes, you were
where
growing
yeah, I
things.
was growing. I mean, they all died, but
No, you actually got something.
I did get something.
You
It's
had a
true.
little harvest.
I'm really good at growing peppers now, but that was very soothing in a way, and it directly related to one of the graphic novels that I'm writing, that I'm about to put to bed. I think it's going to be announced pretty soon.
Oh, I was going to say,
so-
can you tell us about it? But maybe
no,
we
but
have to wait.
the main character in it is a botanist, and she, so it was very it was like a tactile way that I didn't even realize to sort of be in touch with this main character, because she's collecting seeds and I was collecting seeds from like my kitchen scraps. And,
Yeah.
I'd never really thought about how things grew, and sort of, understood the process of it, and how fragile it is, like how if you overwater or underwater, and it's exactly the same thing as writing writing a story.
Yeah. Well, and it's also sort of, this is one of the great things about being a writer, is that you get to go out and gather experience so that you can put lived experience into the work. And so, like, have you ever, I mean, this is one of those things, what is something that you have done because it was going to be in a book that you might not have ever done before? I've been bird watching.
Yeah, 50 million things have I done, because I mean, like, 50 million things. Yeah, I mean, it is that is like kind of the secret best thing about being a writer, is like the diving into research. And I'll do it even if it's like, I mean, when I was writing Batgirl, and they assigned me to have this evil robot, that android of Oracle, be this, I like, listened to like things about emerging consciousness, and like AI,
yeah.
and like even though none of that, like all of that got nixed by DC, but it was just like such a fun way to learn.
It enriched you. It enriched
Absolutely.
you. And I was hoping that you would say, oh, when I was writing Batgirl, I went and fought crime for a while.
Maybe I did, but would I tell you?
Right. I did the whole vigilante thing just for veracity.
I was incognito, my friend.
That's right.
Okay. What is here's thinking of growing things, because we grow our careers as well. What is one thing that you've done that you wish had gotten a little bit more love on it? I mean, like one book that you've written that you wish. I mean, I've got like 50.
I was gonna say, like, how about all of them?
Yeah. But like, if you want today, which is the one that that you wish had gotten a little bit more love?
Oh, that's a bittersweet question.
I know.
That's a bittersweet question. I'm gonna name, can I name two?
Of course.
Okay, Orleans.
Yeah. Oh,
The
yes.
novel Orleans,
Brilliant
which is
book.
set in a future post-disaster New Orleans, and I wrote that for my mom, who was a Katrina survivor. That is such a rich world, and that I had wanted that to be a series, and it carried messages about the environment and our role in it, but also just like human nature. And
book.
Things that have played out again and again since then, that I wish that there had been enough attention to the book at the time that I could have finished that trilogy that I had envisioned. And in the shower today, I was thinking about the Toy Makers Apprentice, which is my retelling of the original story of the Nutcracker and the Mouse King by E.T.A. Hoffman. It's a story I love. It is different from the ballet, and it is such a rich story. And I wrote that like for my 10-year-old self. And I don't know, again, I would have written 2 more books if there had been enough copies sold, I guess is what it is, right? You need the world to say they want more for there to be more. And in both of those books, people say they would like more, but it's not the groundswell that publishing demands these days. So
It is a hard, that is like one of the hardest things when you just wish that, you know, people would be able to engage with the work that you've done that you're so proud of, that feels like it's a little bit invisible. I mean, I certainly have.
What would a name 2 for you? 2 we can amplify now.
Well, First Day on Earth,
Yeah.
which is my novel about a boy who believes that he might have been abducted by aliens and goes to an alien abduction support group and meets a man who is either an alien or a person who has some mental illness, and they sort of save each other in a way.
Yeah.
I love that book.
It's an interesting book to revisit right now when we all feel like we're living in an unreal place,
Yeah. And then Year of the Beasts, which
I was thinking about that in the shower today too. It wasn't even that long of a shower.
Yeah, with Nate Powell. And the book is alternating chapters of prose and comics, and you can read just the prose and you get one story, or just the comics and you get one story, but if you read it together you get the whole story. Nate Powell's art in it is amazing. He's astonishing. Stunning. And now we're seeing a lot more books that incorporate comics in it, but when I came out with that book there weren't
other hybrids out there, and
it was very difficult for it to sort of find its place because people didn't know where to shelve it. They didn't know how to
didn't understand. I think that's the hardest part. I was thinking about that because I was like, oh, what if we did something really different? What if we made a book that was a different sort of experience? And how, when you're the first one to do that, the world doesn't know what to do with it. And it usually sort of dies a quiet death. And then enough people do it, and then they just think you're trying to be like whoever, the first one that did it successfully. It's very frustrating.
Or I mean, I had things too, like, sometimes I still get some books because I was the YA editor at the LA Review of Books. And I remember like 3-4 years ago, maybe, I got arc of a book that had comics in it and stuff like that, and it was like the whole press release was like, never been done before, comics, prose, whatever, and I was like, bitch, don't fucking do that to me. Like, who did this like 10 years ago? Like,
everybody thinks they're the first. I had this conversation in writing the Who HQ historical little nonfiction books, the idea that the first is like this big deal. And everybody's like, oh my God, they're the first, without acknowledging how many people came before the first. Like, Rosa Parks was not the first person to boycott on a bus. And neither was Claudette Colvin, who had done it, shortly before her, but like go back to the 1940s and further, and people were doing it back then. But then when you're the second person, people are like, oh my gosh, they've done it again. And then there's this idea that it's become passé or normalized. So the third person, it might be just as hard, but nobody's showing up. There are no cameras. You're still getting kicked at and spat on by angry crowds or whatever. It's just nobody cares anymore because they think we fixed that.
We did it. It's been done. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to find out what happened to that book with their whole like never done before, amazing. Was it a New York Times bestseller, or did it also end up being sort of like, I don't know what that is.
It is interesting. I mean, I still think though that it's worth it to do these kinds of challenges, even if it does like go into, because here's the thing about books, right, is that Orleans is a book that is there for people to discover, and like books, that's the nice thing about sort of physical media, like a book or a record or, like a song, or, it's not ephemeral. It's not like my operas that are kind of like, you have to see it. And, it's like people can always accidentally stumble upon that.
And even if it's no longer in print at some point, that's the used bookstores of the world are like treasure houses.
Libraries. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
we need to record one of your operas. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking. Like,
I mean, they are recorded, but it's a different engagement with it. Yeah. Totally. Okay. Is there, if you weren't a writer, is there any other kind of art form that you might would have liked to have been?
Yeah. I once did a thing where like it was like a challenge of like 7 lives. What are the 7 things you would be if you weren't what you are? And I remember that I would have been a baker
Oh,
or
I love it.
a dancer.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the other ones were. I mean, I used to want to be, I think I would consider midwife. I would still consider that. I wanted to be an obstetrician when I was a little kid. I also wanted to be a veterinarian. But I would bake and I would dance. And it's funny because like I can basically make cookies, but I just made some terrible cakes over the holidays. If I had put the, whatever it is, the 10,000 hours you need to put into something to become a master at it, if I had done that for dancing or for baking, then you'd be eating something really amazing right now with your miso soup. But alas, all you can do is look at my books.
I have had your cookies and they are very good. I will say that.
Thank you. That's validating.
All right. Last question. Are you obsessing about anything? Is there anything that you're currently obsessed with? And it does not have to be art, it doesn't have to be a book or whatever. It could be like,
Right.
I'm obsessed with tomato soup right now or whatever.
Am I obsessed with tomato soup right now? Alfalfa sprouts. Just sort of weird, but like I've been changing my diet lately and trying to eat more vegetables. And I was somewhere and I got like a turkey burger or something at like Earth Cafe, and whatever sandwich I got, there were alfalfa sprouts on it. And I was like, oh, right, those alfalfa sprouts. Like, I bet you I could buy those and put them on sandwiches at home. And I have started doing that, and it makes it feel like I'm eating out because that's not like a home vegetable for me, if that makes sense. Like, I'm like, my house, it's usually like it's broccoli and carrots and lettuce, and it's not. And then I made the horrible mistake of buying what I thought were alfalfa sprouts, but they were broccoli sprouts. And that was just like methane in your mouth. It was just awful. So I now have fresh alfalfa sprouts again. And really every day is like, I'm in a cafe because I have them. So.
That is amazing. I don't think I've had alfalfa sprouts in a long time, but like a very long, like decades.
They taste like dirt. It's not something you generally want, but for some reason I'm liking it.
This is reminding me that when I was in high school, one of my dearest friends at the time, not now, obviously, but like was Jennifer Aniston. And Jennifer Aniston would always make these, we call them special sandwiches. I have no idea what was in this sandwich, but it was like some kind of special bread and then a cheese and mayonnaise and alfalfa sprouts.
I'm telling you, that's the secret sauce.
I still dream about those special sandwiches at Jennifer's. Like, if I ever see her again, I'm like, what
was in the
sandwich, Jennifer? Okay, so that's the end of my questions. So I would like to know where can people find you on the interwebs?
Okay, you can find me on my website, which is my name, so SherriLSmith.com. You can find me on Twitter or on Instagram. Instagram, I am at Rhymes with Capri, because Sherri rhymes with Capri. And on Twitter, it's more complicated. It's like Sherri_L_Smith. You can also get to my Storyforest stuff with intothestoryforest.com. Or enterthestoryforest.com. Both of those work. And where else can you find me? I don't know. In the funny pages. Not anymore. I used to be in the funny pages, but only in London. Simpsons comics. Not anymore.
Well, Sherri, thank you so much for coming and talking and having a little bit of tea with me today. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you. And thank you for being my friend and being such an amazing creative force in the world.
Cecil, you are a human rainbow. Thank you.
All right, I'm stopping the recording now.